atu anō aku mihi whakawhetai, aku whakamānua kia koutou katoa ko tahuri mai ki te pai o Party People. Ko Mihingarangi ahau e kawi ana i te Māori o tō tātou hui i te pōnei. Welcome to the last episode of Party People. For this year, brought to you by the much revered Public Interest Journalism Fund. It's Tuesday, the 1st of November, an auspicious date because it's the Melbourne Cup apparently. So tonight we'll be riding with the two of the finest thoroughbreds in Māori politics. He's the quickest colt in Kawero, globetrotter Shane Te Pou. And she is the foxy filly who hoofed it into Parliament in 2014, former Māori Party co-leader Marama Fox. It's the winning Quinella tonight. Tēnā kōrua. Do you like that?
I love
hey
it.
Hey you, Marama, no mai. Oh, well, haramai, yeah. How you been? What have you been up to?
Tēnā koe tuatahi mihi atu ki a koe, kia kōrua. Anōna ki ngā mate o te wā I ēnei marama kua pahuri ake nei. Ai, kei ono kia hau noho ana. I live at the bottom of the North Island next to the Ngutu Awa of Wairarapa in a tiny settlement of 30 people, and I try as hard as I can never to leave.
Oh, tēnā koe, o tērā tēnā koutou, o tērā takiwā. Shane, no mai hoki mai ki Aotearoa. How was your trip?
It was tough.
Oh, tough.
Yeah,
Poor
that
thing. I
Western
saw
Europe-
the pictures.
That Western European lifestyle of having a bit of a siesta in the afternoon. And
Oh my word.
yeah, no, it was great. And also just awesome to see the comparables between sort of how New Zealand reacted to COVID and post-COVID and Western Europe. You know, I went to a village in northern Italy where they had 300 kaumata and kui die aged 80 plus. Okay, you know, some people will say, oh, well, their time had come, but they were someone's nanny, they were someone's koro, and they died because of the
What
policies.
size was that village?
Oh, it was about 7,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really small, and in villages like that, you'll have 3 generations living in the same whare or living in little enclaves. So you know, it had a huge effect on them.
Yeah, I bet. Gee. Well, most of the country's mayors and councillors have had the official inauguration ceremonies, complete with pomp and ceremony, music and pōwhiri. But one of the biggest issues for local government has been navigating the tides of three waters. So now a trio of mayors from Tāmaki, Waimakariri and Christchurch have an alternative plan which would see stormwater assets remaining in local council hands, affordable finance for high standard water infrastructure investment, and they want to consolidate to form regional water organisations that can't be sold. I guess, Marama, retaining assets and local ownership, are you a supporter?
Well, as long as that local ownership is Māori ownership. I mean, water is Māori water, and it has been since the treaty, since before the treaty, and it was agreed to in Te Tiriti that it should remain in their hands. And quite frankly, local governments have been the fact that every waterway in our entire area has been just polluted and destroyed because of local government decision making, and I can't see why they've not proven that they deserve to continue to maintain that resource in their hands. The infrastructure that is waiting to be tacked on to poor and broken infrastructure just further compounds the problems, and the councils have done nothing here in Auckland for years, hence the housing crisis, and they've been doing nothing in Wairarapa in every rural town around the country, and water is a huge issue, and there is no way that councils should retain the right after they so have destroyed it so ultimately.
It is a very good point, and I think that when you talk about dirty waterways, it's actually missing from the conversation when we talk about three waters.
It is missing from the conversation, but also what is part of the conversation is if you have a look at the most virulent opposition from local government to three waters reform, you look at their particular track record, like the Waikamata, like the rivers in and around Christchurch, the West Coast Bulla, Wairarapa, they're the worst affected, and that's because of local government inaction and simply populist policies of keeping rates low, not hitting up the polluters simply to get elected come the next election. And we're just going to have more of that. I fear that this government will curtail and they will look for an alternative. And if you look at the 3 mayors that fronted it, what's missing from the conversation is Māori involvement. What they've said is we'll
That is-
engage with
You're not
Māori.
allowed to have
We'll,
it.
we'll
And
engage
that's
with
right,
Māori
the
on
Prime
a
Minister-
case-by-case
the
basis.
Prime Minister said this morning, open to listening, and but like you're right on co-governance. So this trio says that they will leave that to the decision making to the districts to decide how they want to work with Māori.
Yeah, it's
so
absolutely ridiculous.
Marama, the Māori Party, worked alongside the national government, which created the co-governance arrangements with the likes of Waikato, the Waikato River Authority. How does it look if you're not going to work?
Well, I mean,
If you leave it up to-
co-governance is the soft cousin of rangatiratanga. Like, this is the least that we would like to do, actually. This is the soft option. We've got wastewater pipes that are broken right next to stormwater pipes that are broken every single time it rains. Untreated sewage is being tipped into the harbours and the rivers of this country. The only people who are looking out for the taiao and future generation decision making are Māori. Unless we are there in a co-governance nature, or that the statutory management of the waterways come back to Māori, then just predict to see more of that.
And the empirical evidence is very able to be provided. Ngāi Tahu have had a long-term relationship, although it's just been enacted through statute, a long-term relationship in terms of their waterways. We've seen improvement waterways in terms of the Waikato. So when Māori are involved, as kaitiaki, our waterways are enhanced and they get better.
Mana o te wai Māori Party policy.
Tēnā koe mō tēnā. It's if not high-level governance for, co-governance, for the likes of Mayor Brown, how will Auckland continue to take, they consent to 300 million litres a day from the Waikato River? Who are they going to talk to?
Exactly. And he towards the end of the campaign, he ran to the right, the rhetoric in terms of anti-co-governance, but the only saviour for the people of Tamaki Makaurau, where I live, in terms of ongoing water supply, is the Waikato River, and we have it as a result of the co-governance program that exists. Actually, when you think about it, it's not really co-governance. Who leads that that whole debate and who looks after the river are the people of the Waikato. The regional council is an add-on.
I mean, Waikato's not even the only body of water. You've got Hunua, you've got Mangatangi, all of those, those reservoirs, and then you've got out west as well with Kawerau-a-Maki. I mean, these iwi are established iwi. I mean, what is he going to do?
Well, he's got to give his councillors a little bit of notice before he drops a bomb on them with 8 minutes before his first meeting. That would be good. But, I mean, you're an elected official, elected to represent the people, but if you don't listen or talk to the people, before you even got your feet under the desk, you're making policy on the fly about what you're going to do now with the three waters, because the rhetoric is what got him in. But, regional councils were born out of the business roundtable to get control of the regional assets, including water. They are the ones who consent local council decisions about infrastructure and water in the ground. They consent in Wairarapa the dumping of sewage, raw, untreated overflow into our awatipua that all rivers run into. So they're just flooding the entire valley and taking no accountability in response. And Mr. Brown, I had great hopes, sort of, not really, but he's come out and without even talking, he's making policy on the fly. And unless he talks to iwi and Māori, he'll find very quickly that his briefing was not good enough.
He pakanga kei te haere, is it going to be stormy waters for him?
Oh, I think it is, and I also think
not
that this,
just him. I'm talking Waimakariri, I'm talking
Yes,
Christchurch,
but
anyone who's on
what,
board there.
what they're hoping to do is they're hoping to tread water and wait for their saviour to come along, which is Act and National, to do away with three waters, to defer costs to the next generation, to diminish our ongoing responsibility in terms of the climate crisis.
No, I don't believe that that's true. I think the National Party are great on anti-Māori rhetoric when they get up and need to get some votes.
Yes.
Same as David Seymour, same as poor old Winnie banging the same old drum, trying to get some votes to get themselves back in there. But they find very quickly when they're in there, when they get their briefings, that it's not so easy to cast aside such important legislation.
You've been in
dismiss
government.
Māori.
How difficult is it to unpick a treaty claim?
Mate, if you even try, when they tried to go down the Ohukaimwana route of making the new marine reserve without talking to the whānau, the whole country got up in arms. We had all the dames and all the sirs turn up and say, no, son, we're not doing that. If you break one treaty claim, then you put at risk every treaty claim. So they know we'll be marching in the street if that happens, and National know that. So while their rhetoric is very anti-Māori, once they get in there, they'll know, and they will.
No, I get that. I get that.
Is co-governance or walking away from co-governance a seabed foreshore take?
I think it is actually, but I understand where you're coming from, Marama. But I think this new breed of act is very different. And when they only had 2 or 3 members of parliament, and John Key had other alternatives such as the Māori Party, but this is a very radical, very different and act party that thrives on beating our people around the head.
But they believe in the letter of the law.
Winston beat our people around the head from the day he walked into Parliament, and had lots of Māori sitting alongside him doing it. And then, you know, he stands on the marae and he's all charm and charisma, and 2 days later he stands at Orewa and says, don't give them any water. You know, he plays with our people's future, and this is not anything new in an election year.
Let's jump into, so there's been rumours around the Prime Minister, leaving before the next election, mostly coming from reckons, really, from News Talk ZB. Then I think the AM show jumped on today, FM's Rachel Smalley as well. Where does this kind of kōrero come from?
I just think it's a perfect storm of misogyny. Just people make up shite for the sake of making it up. It creates more talkback sort of callers. It's like a real time algorithm in terms of trying to generate public debate and discussion that really isn't based on anything. And she's had to put up with it a lot. You know, part-time PM.
When you commentate, though, do you base it on sources?
Well, look, you know, I'm a commentator, but I think journalists have to act more appropriately, and they have to have some base support and base source, and the base source in this case is the Prime Minister. Look, it wasn't that long ago we had a leader of the opposition give up the race after 55 days. The narrative would have been fundamentally different, I think, if it was a woman, and I think it would have been different again if it was a Māori woman, because there is a hierarchy of hate out there, and Māori women are at the apex of it, and the Prime Minister being a Pākehā woman, she might be down a little bit, but there's a focus.
Whakawhiti atu ki te tihi o te maunga, Marama over here. Yeah, what do you think? Political conjecture? Is this just what happened?
Yeah, it's hilarious. People get hold of rumours from all sorts of things. Like there was a rumour went around that I worked for big tobacco, which was completely unfounded, untrue, but people like to spread that all over the place. But, you know, this is an opinion piece that came out of a few reporters at the end of the year trying to make predictions about what would happen. We've got Jacinda, who goes from the pin-up of Vogue to the smiling pulpit of governing COVID, you know, and getting all her words correct. But she's very crafted nowadays. It seems very crafted. She doesn't like going off script. She doesn't like being pushed on some questions. She tries to avoid answering questions. And I think there is an obvious decline, obviously in the polls, where her light is fading. Now, if you're going to speculate that she's an ambitious person, you might look to her stand at the world, at the UN. You might look at her times on the TV and the talkback and those sorts of things. But she has been a steady hand during some tough times. If she was going to go, she would be going now. I don't think she's going to go. I think she has more loyalty to our country than that. And I do think she's ambitious, but she's on the slide. There's a lot of things pointing against a Jacinda or a Labour outright win now.
I just picked up also when I was reading that article, Rachel Smalley also had a reckon that she reckons we should ban hoodies in malls, and that will help with ram raids.
So why are we listening to her again?
It just shows a total disengagement from the reality. The way in which our young people dress has no effect or outcome on sort of the economic disparity and the lack of hope that our young people have, and there's no demarcation between that and the increase of sort of the behaviour that we've seen in terms of ram raids. The reality is, if we had a wraparound service, if our young people felt more comfortable, if they felt that they belonged, this crap wouldn't happen.
Is this the Māori Party's whānau ora? You need whānau ora.
Well, it's the lack of whānau ora in action and without the suitable funding. I mean, the Māori Health Authority got $45 in their funding per Māori in the country. That'll get them a doctor's visit, but not too many doctors. I mean, Jacinda is, or the ram raids, I should say, are an indication of the growing crisis of poverty, of a lack of food in the house. And when Jacinda came out even 2 weeks ago and said that we've removed 125,000 children from poverty.
Hardship.
We've lifted them out of poverty. But hold on, at the bottom of the Little Wins report in the disclaimer, it says we don't count people in emergency housing or who are homeless and living on the
Who we know
street
there's 10,000
because they
of.
don't have a household index.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can't tell me you're lifting them out of poverty when you stop counting them.
Yeah, fair point.
No, it's a fair point, and I just think, and you know, when you're already poor and when you're already impoverished, and when the cost of living is at 8%, which doesn't take into consideration increased housing costs, you're gonna get desperate and you're gonna act out.
People are desperate.
So, well, it's hard to believe it's our last show, and we're so happy to have you on our last show, 2022. So with that, we have some ghost TT buckets for the best performing MPs and some soggy toasted sandwiches for the others. Shane, best performing MPs and why?
Oh, I've got two. I've got Minister Jackson. Yes, lots of issues around the Māori Health Authority. I get that, but we do have a Māori Health Authority. We do have our own kaupapa, and I think we can make it work. I think that the merger of RNZ and TVNZ will be good for our people, good for our in terms of telling our own stories. And of course, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Public Interest Fund. And I just think that he sticks up for us all the time. And I wanted Debbie from the Māori Party. I think she's always articulate, she's smart, and she's got a way in which she'll have a very strong message without alienating herself and others. And I think that she's one to watch in terms of I think the rise of the Māori Party in some shape or force come the next election.
So there you go, top performer Debbie Ngāre-Wapaka from the Māori Party and Minister Jackson. And Marama, who's on your Christmas list?
Oh, I struggled so much with this. I really had to hunt for someone who had impressed me. Debbie, yes, absolutely. I've enjoyed the way she conducts and handles herself in her articulate nature. I think her stand over the moratorium on seabed mining, and she's been ahead of that cause for a long, long time. So very smart.
Even before she came in.
Exactly. But I do want to actually give a shout out to Nanaia Mahuta because she's been steady. She has been stable, and she is a dignified minister out there on the foreign circuit, and she knows how to do it. That whole history of kingitanga comes with that, obviously, and so I think she's handled herself really well, and I didn't want to give her any credit whatsoever, but I had to. I looked and thought, no, actually, you've done a great job.
While we're still there, who's failed to fire this year?
I have 5. Because that was easier. So here's my biggest winner and loser. And he got the biggest win from being the biggest loser, and that's Trevor Guantanamo Mallard, who tried Guantanamo Blinken torture tactics on the protest with sleep deprivation and the sprinkler waterboarding. So he wins because he gets the cushiest job for being the biggest egg. So he was number 1. And number 2... I've got him listed. Calvin Davis, I'm sorry, but he's been firing blanks since he walked into Parliament, and he feels to me disingenuous to our people. And I don't know if that's me with my bias, probably, but I think he's tried to reform Māori medium education, and all the Māori medium people have walked away, and he's left his own mates to carry that forward and thinks that that's a good job. I'm sorry, but if the Māori medium community are not behind you, then you've failed. I've got quick number 3. Number 3, I wanted to say Penny Hinari over his Te Reo Māori kōrero on that alone, because it comes from a place of privilege when you have your own language and say, no, we don't want to make it compulsory. I'm too scared of what will happen to it. Well, what will happen to it is it'll get down to the 80% of our Māori children not learning and speaking or proud of the reo. Number 4, the Greens, all of them, misfired everywhere, all over climate change, all over everything. And number 5, I'm sorry, but I'm disappointed in Jacinda's handling of the protest, of the mandates, which I felt were completely unnecessary because it ostracised our people and pushed them in a
A
corner.
very diverse list of
Yeah.
failed to fire there. What about you, Shane?
I've got a very targeted list, and that are the Māori MPs that stand behind David Seymour when he attacks our people, he attacks our language, he attacks our hapu and iwi on a daily basis for cheap political narrative and votes, and they're turning positive for him. So yeah, that's my sort of miss. But you know what? That's their game. Their polls are up, and they will have more members of parliament come the next election.
Who's the best party leader?
The best party leader. Well, I think that given the headwinds that the Prime Minister has faced, it's been the winter of discontent. They're still within the margin of error. I think you have to give her that, but probably, and you will be astounded by this, Chris Luxton, because he has moved the National Party from sub-20s
Well, he's still there.
to looking likely to be the Prime Minister come the next election.
Okay for Chris Luxton. And have you got one?
It
It could be a bit.
Well, I mean, I
party
don't
leader,
even
good or
want to
bad.
say it out loud, and only because the performance had such a jump in the polls. And I agree with you. I actually rang David Seymour and said, stop using Māori for political gain. But he has, and it served his purpose,
Yeah.
and his numbers have jumped in the polls. He's become the go-to guy for
For all the wrong reasons.
all the wrong reasons.
But the left-right bloc basically has not changed over the last 12 months. And Luxton needs to get national over 40% consistently. If he doesn't, I think some within his own caucus will be yapping at his heels.
Well, can I jump in just before we close? I know we're just about
No,
out
no,
of time,
carry
but,
on.
No.
you know, Te Pāti Māori could have been the kingmakers if we win that vote of faith in ourselves that you actually could do that. I'd love to see them sit uncommitted in a minority government and do a vote by vote on each policy. I'd love to see that happen. It would never happen. Nobody wants a stable government like that. But they've had a good push to get them up. I don't know that was all on the backs of their own work.
Let's because we're a diverse and equitable program, we're going to also ask you, sporting team or individuals of o te tau. Have you got a team?
Black Ferns, Ruby Tui. Stunning karanga. Oh, not just her, all the girls. That haka.
Yes, incredible.
Incredible. Blew me away. They're my favourite sporting moment
Me
of
too.
the
I mean,
entire year.
it's amazing, eh? It's actually the
Stunning.
development and the preservation of te reo all in one when you watch that.
Wahine, and it was so stunning to hear that karanga. Powerful, broke through the silence. I'm like, you ain't got a comeback for that.
Yeah.
It's not just staunch,
Yeah.
it's hardcore.
Yeah,
It's
mihi
really
ana
good.
ki rā.
And there's
And they're skilled.
and let's
And
hope
they're quite good at
Let's hope they beat the French this Saturday. First time, to be honest, I've been watching women's rugby. It's been great.
Skillful.
But, you know, we've got the women's rugby league team that's doing pretty well in Europe at the moment. And then you see people like our stewards, like Lisa Carrington. And, you know, I just think our Māori women sports people, they really do carry themselves extraordinarily well. And you never hear any scandals, you never hear any rumours, you never hear any contempt. They just do the may and they win.
Kia pai.
I want to give a last shout out in the sports arena to a young niece who's currently in Ireland. She has one leg, she lost it in a gang action. She is now competing to try and get a place for the sport of MA, with
Wow.
one-legged MA fighting in the
Wait, her name
Paralympics. Her name is Jamie Ayres on Facebook. You'll find her that way rather than her last name. And I'm just so excited for the way she's turned her life around.
Yep,
She's
me
stunning.
tautoko
Nice.
tātou I tēnei wahine. What should we be looking forward to? Because Auntie over here's got a little waiata to end.
Nice.
So just what are
Okay,
we looking
please
forward to for next 2023 politically?
Oh, well, I won't be commentating. This is my last gig today. No. I've got some
Thank
personal.
you.
I've got some personal responsibilities, some mahi responsibilities, and I want to focus on that. And I hope, Marama, that you get back into the game, whether it be politically or in terms of commentary. And I encourage our people to do it. And what happened was, 5 years ago, the hui gave me a call and said, Shane, do you want to be on the panel? And I thought I'd give it a go, and you just can build up your presence, and I encourage people to do that. It's going to be a hell of a year next year politically, and I feel that our people are going to feel the brunt of it. They will say that the next election will be based on the economy. If you look at the way in which ACT and even New Zealand First, and to a lesser degree the National Party are lining up, they're going to use race and what they call division as the battering ram to dislocate the Labour Green government.
If I don't get to say thank you on air because Auntie takes us out, tēnā koe e te tūngane. You've been incredible, and we've loved having the richness of your kōrero and your insight on Party People. Party People will be back next year. We'll just be a little bit, we're not sure what it's going to look like. But Marama, you want to give us a little why?
Oh, well, I do have a little while too. I did want to say that no matter where you are, I'm sure it will look beautiful and absolutely stunning. So I wrote these words today. Forgive me if I get lost. But infamously, here it goes. You better watch out and get ready to cry. You'll make a big pout, and I'm telling you why. High inflation's coming to town. You better make a new list and check on it twice. You're gonna find out food's 3 times the price. High inflation's coming to town. It increases when you're sleeping, then doubles when you're awake. Here I get lost. And I go to it'll take car payments and a mortgage to a place of great heartache. If you want to avoid more red and blue, you have to vote for Māori Party too. Māori Party's gonna come on into town.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Merry Christmas.
You couldn't really be in the Māori Party if you can't sing at the party.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
We're history.
History,
I want to thank everybody for tuning in for 2022. It's been absolutely fabulous. And to all of our crew and to RNZ who's given us a home, it's been amazing. What are you doing for the holidays and Christmas? Anything special with the whānau?
Yes, I've just come back from Western Europe. My kids said, Dad, take us somewhere special. We're going to go to Kawerau.
What a cool guy, eh?
Yeah.
And you, Marama, tell me about what's happening down in the Wairarapa for the...
Well, I'm going to stop protesting around the misuse of water and consenting, like J-Swaps had to get them in there who got consent to quarry another maunga that all the silt's going in out of Matamata or Kauia, going into the river. It's happening everywhere, so I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go to the Wairarapa and I'm going to hang out and get flounder and fish.
Nice flounder for breakfast.
Well, that's us on Party People for this year, e hoa ma. We've loved having a wānanga with all of you. Ka nui te mihi ki te puna whakatonga rewa, mōna I tautoko I tēnei kaupapa. Don't forget you can watch us, you can watch the whole series if you want on RNZ's YouTube account and the Facebook pages, or you can download us for that long trip to Kawerau on Apple Podcasts. Thank you, RNZ, again for having us, our commissioners and all the lovely people that press all the buttons. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora.